All right, the meeting is back in session. There was no action taken. We will move to items for commission action. Number A, consider authorizing the submittal of an additional economic development grant.
We just need a motion.
Okay, do I have a
There
motion?
needs to be some explanation about it.
Oh, we are needing to make some additional improvements in the West Laurel Industrial Park to facilitate the industrial prospect that we are working with that we were not aware of initially, so we need permission to submit an additional economic development grant to facilitate that project.
I have no questions.
I have no questions.
All right, do I have a motion? Excuse me.
I move that we authorize the submission of a additional economic development grant to KDOT.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Item B, consider adoption of the water treatment plant master plan.
I need to get PBC on TV right quick.
Oh, okay. John, how are you this morning?
Doing quite well, doing quite well. Previously, back in June, we presented the master plan, and we've provided updates based on the comments of the commission. So with this particular request for commission action.
John, can you hold on just a second? I'm having
Absolutely.
trouble hearing you.
Absolutely.
If you're the meeting organizer, press star now. You're now joining the meeting. Please wait. You're now joining the meeting.
And I don't see PUC on there yet.
We're there.
All right.
Okay, John, go ahead.
So previously in June, we presented the draft version of the water treatment plant master plan. And we provided updates to that plan based on the comments of the commission. And so that those were part of the attachments that you've received. The other thing that you received was kind of a single sheet which talked through the various projects that we would be seeing over the next year or the next 5 or 6 years. This is not officially a part of the report. What this is really a description of the way that we would implement the plan. So the plan here is to, rather than have a large $6 million project that we execute all at once, over the next 5 years, implement a much more modest plan in order to do the immediate needs as identified in the report. What this does is a couple of things for us. Number one, it minimizes the project spend per year. By lowering the spend, you lower the complexity of what you're trying to accomplish, and that lowers the overall, risk of the project going off the rails. And to me, that's something that's nice. Number two, it brings a predictability. Here's what we're planning on doing. Now, one thing I will note: not each of these projects is not equally well defined from an engineering standpoint. Several of the projects are at a 60% design completion level already. And that's good because that gives us a great idea on what's there and what's missing in the project. One particular project, which we've discussed before, was the ultimate fate of what happens with the residuals in the sludge lagoons. And this is the silt that comes out of the river water. And that's an issue because, as mentioned before, it's where the regulations related to water overlap with the regulations related to solid waste. So it's something that we have to deal with and we're working on, but that's the least developed part of this plan. but it's also relatively urgent because we don't want our lagoons to fill up and not be able to place that that silt and clay that falls out of the water as we treat it.
John,
Yes.
that goes, let's say you've got the silt that comes out of the front end of the treatment in the holding basement or sediment. That flushes into the lagoon, but then the backwash from the filters, it goes into the lagoon too, and then they discharge into the river, or
Yes. So there's a
what?
The backwash water goes directly into this river. We're gonna relocate that to the lagoons.
Okay, that was one of the situations. Now it just goes direct to the river.
Right.
But we've got to go into the lagoon, but the lagoon right now just serves the sediment at
Out
the
of
front end.
Out of the North Basin.
Yeah, okay.
And so that's and that is critical because, again, as we pull water through the system, we'll continue to generate that sediment. So, but as I noted, that's where solid waste law and regulation kind of intermingles, and it's also state and federal. So we have a request in with PEC. They're looking at one potential solution that's a shorter term solution, but eventually we need to deal with this as an ongoing process. So let's see. And I'll note that Chuck Mitchell and Nicole Franken. Nicole, are you on?
No, I just contacted her. She doesn't have a Teams invite
Okay.
Okay,
to get in.
Okay.
So if you could send her one, she can walk right in. She's waiting. We do that.
okay, I'm trying, my computer's spinning.
Okay. So Chuck is here, and we're inviting Nicole, but they're here for technical, and of course, Ed is available for any sort of operational sorts of questions about the plan. But ultimately, the request is to adopt the master plans, and we'll work through the individual elements in a capital plan, which we will approve in the usual way before the commission. So the plan itself is kind of the roadmap for what we want to do, and then the capital plan, those individual pieces, are the blocking and tackling of how we implement it over time.
One of the things in the master plan, it talked about the potential of reintroducing the backwash water to the front of the process again. Is that something in the future that you're considering, or is that where you're talking about in the pieces that you'll analyze those actual potentials and then plan out the project from there?
I'll have to wait till Nicole gets on the phone for
Oh, okay.
the processing of it.
She's joining now.
Oh, okay,
It'll
good,
just-
good.
Nicole, are you there?
Yep, just got on.
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to ask the question again, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, in the master plan, it talked about the potential for reintroducing the backwash water into the process again. Is that realistic, cost-wise, or is that something that, when you look at it, it's just a potential that we never will advance or do anything on? In the theory, it sounds like we've already filtered the water, that it would be, addressing our limits of what we can draw out of the river. So if you brought that back in, it could extend the usage of what we're treating. So is that a viable consideration as we go forward adopting the master plan?
We haven't included that in the proposed improvements at this point because to do that you would need to put in some new some infrastructure, like an equalization tank, to feed it back through the process. And you would, it would be reducing the amount that you'd be pulling out of the river, but at the same time, you guys aren't really having issues with your water rates at this point in time, and it would be overall cheaper at this point to send it to the lagoon. So that's certainly something you guys can consider going forward. Is those other drivers, if you're using more water out of the river, or if your lagoon capacity is reaching its limits, but at this point there's not enough drivers to kind of justify the costs for the infrastructure improvements required for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That something that if it does become an issue later on, we can do, but it's all driven by cost, what's going to be most effective. So we're not going to commit at this time to a step or a phase that's going to be cost prohibitive where we have other issues to address. Okay.
And one of the things that I requested from PEC is that we don't change the process by which we make the water to a significant extent, because our water tastes good. and having a high satisfaction from the consumers with the taste of the water, it's something I really am hesitant to change any processes.
Yeah, I can see that we've got a lot of issues to address to guarantee our production and our water quality, to put that as a driving factor and put the money where we're going to get the most benefit from it, the longevity of continued production and continued quality. Okay.
We far exceed what the state requirements are as far as water quality when looking through the documents, and we have for a number of years. So
Yes, very consistent.
we're very consistent. So we sure don't want to change that part of it. We want to continue with that.
And the other part of this was that we don't do anything that degrades our capacity. Not necessarily growing the size of the system, but we don't want to lower the capacity of what the system can produce.
Pardon me, John. Question with regard to capacity. What percentage of our current capacity are we running at? What I'm asking is, if we can, do we understand what our maximum capacity is, and how much is our average capacity consumption? So, how much of that capacity is consumed on a regular basis?
Well, currently, we're running about 2.5 million gallons per day now, at this hot summertime.
So that's our average?
Yeah, it's averaging that now.
And what's our maximum?
6.
6 million?
Mm-hmm.
So we're running at less
Well,
than 50%.
Actually, we could put 8 million a day through that plant,
All right.
if the river will keep up.
Yes, indeed. So barring a shortage of water in the river, our maximum processing capacity is 8 million gallons a day, and we're currently averaging 2.5 million. Did I
Right.
get that right?
Yeah, it'll drop down to 1.5 here this fall,
Understood.
run
Thank
through
you.
spring.
But what I'm trying to grasp, I guess, John, is that by maintaining a maximum capacity of 8 million gallons, we have room for growth.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And the nice thing about that capacity is it gives us a little bit of slack. We're not, that additional capacity, it gives us time to react if issues arise.
Indeed, you're talking about we have some buffer water in the system that could, tide us over should we have some kind of an interruption.
Mm-hmm. And an example would be at Thanksgiving of, what year was that?
Yeah, just a few years ago
Yeah,
when we had the
when there was the fire up in
chemical.
New Deshay.
Mhm.
So in addressing that, we did have to go on a water conservation due to the level of the verdigris. Or are we in the process of, according to the documents here, renegotiating or negotiating water usage from Elk City
Yes,
Reservoir?
we have a draft contract, and we're in the process of reviewing that, and then we will be bringing that to you
Okay.
at a later date.
So that will supplement, in case we run through that situation again with the verdigris, we do have we will have an agreement in place that will ensure that we will be able to meet our water requirements for the city.
Yes,
and
it's
the rural
something
water
that we're
districts.
working on, and John's been working with the state on directly.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
we've held our first meeting with Mr. Chubb and reviewing the contracts, and we're working through that with the state, and so.
Okay, good, good. Glad to hear that.
John, you're indicating a minimum for that contract of 28 million gallons per year, and at 2.5 million gallons a day average usage, we're talking about 10 days worth of coverage in a drought, right?
Well, that would be if we had normal consumption during a drought.
Oh, indeed.
And so we would certainly be talking to the citizens about minimizing consumption during that period. The current quantity that we have, it's penciled into the contract, is 60 million gallons a year. And the cost of that, of the fees that we fully understand, if we use that 60 million gallons, is $22-some thousand a year. And when you look at the cost, if we don't use it, it's half that cost. So it'd be $11,000 or $12,000.
It's basically insurance in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, relative to the total water department budget, then what percentage is that?
Very
I'm sorry.
small.
I'm sorry. It's almost de minimis. It's
Absolutely.
It's almost immaterial to your budget. So it's just like insurance, like you said.
In let's say in 19 out of 20 years, we don't use it at all. But in the 20th year, then we have 60 million gallons worth of water for our citizens.
That will also help us with industrial recruitment too, because we can verify that we can supply the
Their
water that
needs.
they need even during drought conditions.
Well, that's very important. We need to consider that in everything that we do, attracting additional private investment, industrial or residential.
So it looks like we've been consistently lower than in the 89, I think 89% is what it shows in 2016 of our total allocation. So there is some area that we're not pushing our limit in normal use. So this will give us a guarantee in drought time that we'll have the water available. Then
Yes.
in storage capacity would be you got to draw it out and then you got to store it after it's treated. So we're pretty good shape on both ends. It's just the actual nuts and bolts need to be polished to keep the plant functioning at its capacity is what our master plan is looking at going in. And since there's some areas of it that's was built in 1900 and others in 1966 with limited maintenance, and now we're starting to address preserving the 1900 to get a few more years and doing potential replacement of some of the components that have weathered more severely in the treatment alone, not in distribution.
Yes.
It was an interesting report. You know, I started looking at it of why are we going into all the detail of what is going on, but all the front end laid the groundwork for the findings that without that it's lost. But understanding how the plant operates and looking at the statistics of the water quality for the last 10 years, how we've exceeded our requirement, and You know, our staff at the water treatment plant has really done an excellent job of continuing operation, making things work, and producing quality water for the city of Independence. I think they're to be commended, and you know, I thought it was an excellent report.
And when you talk about the staff, I think they have been exceedingly diligent as well as exceedingly professional in the way they run that plant and in the care they take.
And definitely, they're really concerned about their product.
Absolutely. It's something that's got to be right every day.
John, I have a question in looking at that. Some of the controls through the SCADA system are automatic, and then some are either non-existent or maybe not operable. So will part of this address some of those issues to where I guess you have a SCADA system, but you also have the ability to operate it in case there's a malfunction with the SCADA system. So you have protection there. Is that right?
Yeah, we got battery backup,
Okay.
plus a generator.
Right. But there were some issues that some of the controls weren't in sync with the SCADA system, or maybe I misread that. As far as everything, you know, you're able to control everything through the SCADA system without having to resort to manually doing something because it's not part of the SCADA system. Maybe I may have misread that.
Our chemical feed pumps, they are on the SCADA system. It just shows that they're running or if they're not.
Okay.
But we manually adjust the speed on them.
Okay.
Because the 40/20 signal doesn't let the SCADA system do it correctly.
Okay. And maybe that's where my misunderstanding was.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
And that SCADA system, it also gives you an alarm if something is not functioning. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm familiar with them, but I'm just asking to verify. Okay, thank you.
John, looking at your plan of the projects bucketed by fiscal year, these groupings, I'm assuming they are logical in terms of their impact on production and their interaction one with another, so that there are not a lot of stops and starts to water production and that kind of thing. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Ed and I sat down and looked at the way these projects most logically would flow. And in fact, in large part, you know, we tried to frame what are the risks to our system, and tried to do those projects first and prioritize those. But as we've talked through the projects, that we didn't find any case where we would be disrupting our water supply or water quality in any fashion.
I've found in my own project management that those transitions, as you end one cycle or 1 year and start the next one, are where you get tripped up sometimes as you leave some detail incomplete, and it creates a problem during the transition period. So
Yes.
That's just an important consideration. It sounds to me like you have attempted to cover that and make sure that the work can be completed and comprehensive in each year.
Yes, and we're fortunate in this case, in that many of the sub-projects are not especially related to each other. So you have security and structural bracing, which are, you know, pure physical needs for the plant, but they don't impact the water process at all. So that, you know, that's fortunate for us. And for instance, fixing up and adding, expanding the office, that doesn't really impact our water quality, but so we're fortunate in that aspect.
As long as it doesn't disrupt the personnel that need to be there watching the dial at the right moment in time to manually adjust whatever needs to be manually adjusted. Right?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. This plan that you put together really helped me grasp the scope of the project and understand the flow of funds, and I appreciate that a lot because I was concerned with the total amount, but not as concerned with these time frames and the bucketed amount of work that you put into each of them. So that helped me a lot. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would also like to commend staff for the work and PEC working together to come up with this plan. It looks at the complete water distribution, the whole process of the system to identify potential current problems and potential problems that we're going to face down the road so we can get continued longevity out of this. You know, the Clear World's an example have been reconstructed in the 1900s, and they've undergone some type of repair in the 60s, but we're 50, 55 years down the road from the time some of these improvements were made. So some of these are long overdue to be looked at and to be corrected to get us down the road a little further. So, but that's the whole idea behind a master plan. You look at everything, and you start addressing the needs from the biggest needs that you see all the way down to the minute details to make sure that you've got everything covered and you can continue forward on this. So I learned a lot going through this too, and it was because my knowledge of this was very limited. So it was an eye opener to me to see some of the photos and read about the history of the plant and the improvements when they were made and what type of the improvements have been made over the years. But anyway, it was well done, well researched, and well laid out. I was able to follow it through and understand it, at least a good part of it. So if I was able to do that, then you did a good job.
Ed and the PEC team did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I want to thank them. They've been a good partner to work with.
Looking at the cost for the different components of the project and the breakdown, there was included in the master plan projected costs that could be incurred as far as rate increases. Is it possible to phase in the work that we can keep the monthly charge to the citizens as minimal as possible, or stay within our current rate, or we're going to be looking at increasing rates to fund the work?
I let Lacey know this question might be coming, so.
Okay.
Currently, we're not looking at increasing the rates to cover the cost of these projects. Specific funding scheme is still to be determined, but there are a lot of federal dollars coming out right now for projects just like this, so that will be our first avenue to apply for any and all grants or federal aid that we can.
And then with the projects that we've had, will some of them be falling off as we go forward, that where we're generating revenue in our monthly rate to cover some repairs, that as those mature, that we'll be able to use that money to fund further improvements, or are we spread out
In
longer?
terms of loans, I know we have, I want to say, $1.5 million remaining in our water treatment plant revolving loan. So the first years, the first projects will increase that capacity. And then there's potential for increasing the dollar amount in that loan if we need the cash flow up front before some of these federal dollars come down. But I don't know, I might be misunderstanding the question on projects rolling off.
Well, as we borrow from the loan, will our payment decrease to KDHE so that we can, we've allocated in the budget 200,000, but as it goes forward, does that payment decrease every
I would have to
year
look
or
at our
5 years so
amortizations.
that-
I'd have to look at our amortization schedules. Off the top of my head, I don't think that they typically decrease. David, do you know?
I don't think they do.
I think they're set and they're for 20-year periods on all of them.
Sometimes, I think in one of the sewer loans, they had a forgiveness.
Sometimes we get lucky and they send us a letter that says, hey, we're going to forgive part of your loan, but we
Okay.
can't count on that.
Okay, so there are avenues available to us to keep our consumer rate
Yes, that's the goal.
steady. Okay.
Yes.
In regards to that, on our rate increases where we did adjust water rates, are we in the last year of that?
2022 is the last year.
2022 is the last year, and that will be 3%?
Yes.
Okay. I knew we were getting close, I just couldn't remember the year. Okay, thank you, Lacey.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, PEC, too. Yep. All right, if there's no further questions on this, then I entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the water treatment plant master plan.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, motion carried. Item 4, in executive session. I make a motion that we recess for an executive session for a consultation with the city's attorney regarding possible litigation pursuant to the attorney-client privilege exception, KSA 75-4319B2. And this will be for how many minutes?
David, what, 15? Yeah.
For 15 minutes. So the meeting will resume at 10:10, and that'll be Kelly, David, the commission.
And the city attorney.
And the city attorney, Jeff Chubb. And do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, motion carried. All right, the meeting is back in session, and we're going to extend for another 10 minutes. So I make that motion, we will resume at 10:23. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, motion carried.
take care of other business.
Was that the last agenda item?
Yes.
Thank you.
About time for a break.
All right, the meeting is back in session. There was no action taken. And that concludes our business for today. I make a motion that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Thank you.